Sony has recently just given us our first glimpse at the PS5 UI, which, while it has some things in common with what we're used to seeing on the PS4, looks to be a pretty heavy revision over what the last console had to offer. And in particular, it has some very interesting new functions. Now, at the same time, I have had access to a preview version of the Xbox Series X that has a near final version of the UI. There are still some updates and changes that can happen over time, but it gives us the general idea and goal of how the system is supposed to operate. So I really want to kind of look at how these two companies are approaching the UIs of their systems and what's different about each one, at least from what we can tell with these early versions of both. First off, let's talk about the PS5 UI reveal. I'm not going to talk about it all in the same order they did the show in. I just want to kind of highlight some specific things. First off, the home screen. The home screen is really one of the aspects that, at least based on what they're showing us so far, is a similar but refined version of what the home screen was like on the PS4. Specifically, they have now really focused on just having a main line for games that you have access to. There is an entirely separate, unrelated tab for media that they haven't shown us what that looks like yet. We just know that's an option you can go to. And they've eliminated that top line of options that the PS4 had in exchange for just a couple little options off in the corner for things like settings and user account. Now, like with the PS4 in this UI, on this kind of bar of games, you're able to highlight a particular title, look down below, and have access to things like what friends are playing, what kind of achievement progress you're currently seeing, and a whole lot of other stuff that is new to the system that is very interesting, along with, of course, if you go all the way to the left, having access to the PlayStation 5 store, which is now, rather than being a standalone app, is integrated into the system itself, which is a very welcome change. So overall, at least the home screen has a very similar vibe to the one on the PS4, but it's a much more cleaned up game-centric version of it that I really appreciate. One thing I'm curious about that they didn't fully detail in this snippet is how much control you're going to have over this. Because with the PS4, for instance, everything was organized based on games you'd most recently played. The only kind of real control you had was that you could group some titles together into folders. And it looks like the PS5 home screen is going to be relying on that same kind of organization, where we saw the most recently played game being on the far left, just to the right of the store and events tabs, and then having older games go to the right of that. Where things are very different, though, and get a lot more interesting, is the control center. Now, this is the overlay that you get when you want to bring up some options and commands while playing in the middle of a game. You can also bring it over the home screen as well. It includes some easy access options, things like, managing controllers, audio, mics, all that kind of good stuff. But the really big thing here is the new card system. Cards are these variety of different things that are tied into either the game specifically or into social functions like being a part of party chat with friends. And what they allow you to do is to not only have access to some handy information while in the middle of a game, but you can also do things like create a picture-in-picture effect or snap them to the side of the screen, so that way you can have access to both those things at the same time. Now, on the social side of things, where this is really interesting is how you can have ongoing party chat on the side of the screen while actively playing a game, or even having a friend's screen shared to your TV so you can have a picture-in-picture effect, seeing what they're playing while you're playing something else. But one of the more unique features is it looks like certain PS5 games are going to offer a system-level support where you can actually make use of the UI to help you kind of quickly get to things that you want to do in specific games, whether that's trying to address a specific challenge, launch a particular level that you haven't fully completed yet, and you can even get actual official little walkthrough videos to help you find things that you haven't fully completed yet. Now, obviously, this is a game-by-game basis type of thing. They have said that it's not going to be something that's on every single PS5 title out there, but I think it's a safe assumption that a lot of first-party titles are going to have some very interesting integrations with this new system, and I'm curious to see how many big third-party companies jump on as well, because that potentially leads to a lot of very interesting, useful features that would be exclusive to PS5 versions of multi-platform games. I mean, imagine being in the middle of a big multi-platform title and just having the option to look up a quick walkthrough on how to find this hidden collectible. Whereas on Xbox, you'll have to do the old-fashioned way and search around on the internet for a little while. Again, what we have seen is just a snippet as an example, and it is not going to be a thing that's going to be on, 100% of PS5 titles, but it's a very intriguing concept. Taking all this into account together, there are certain aspects of the PS5's UI design that definitely share some DNA with the PS4, but clearly, PlayStation is looking to create an entirely new feeling experience, especially when it comes to this command center overlay. Now, by comparison, whereas PlayStation looks like they're trying to do some kind of very heavy revision of how things worked on PS4 and have a new experience on PS5, Xbox is much more of a fluid evolution of what we're used to seeing on the Xbox One, but streamlined very heavily with a large emphasis on customization that I really appreciate. Compared to the interface the Xbox One had the majority of its lifetime, the new interface on the Series X relies on a heavy degree of verticality. Instead of having to go to different tabs going left and right, as well as having ups and downs, the entire system is really focused on just having one main timeline that you can go through. Now, the top line of this is things like most recently launched games and apps. There's also a way to quickly access your main game library, and a couple banners for things like games that have recently come to Game Pass, or your progress on different achievements. It's everything below this top line, though, that gets really interesting. Now, at first glance, you're just going to see things like, oh, there's a tab for entertainment, or there's a tab for a particular game, or for your favorites lists. These are all things that we were kind of used to seeing before, but the thing about this is that this entire timeline is actually customizable. With a single touch of one of the buttons on your controller, you can bring up a customization menu where you can pick which games you want to have a full highlighted segment. You can choose which kind of Xbox-provided categories you want to have, whether that's entertainment or Game Pass games, or you can even customize what self-made groups you've made, whether it's collecting different types of games you enjoy using, or media apps that you like to use often. This customization has also been expanded to the Xbox One Guide, which is their approach to an overlay that happens in mid-game and can also be used on the home screen as well. This remains mostly similar to what we saw on the Xbox One, but again, there is that degree of customization going on. You can freely rearrange how these tabs are organized, so if there's ones that you know you use more often, for instance, if you know you like to check your friends on social tabs or see your achievement progress, you can put those ones on the far left, so they're the ones that immediately pop up when you open the guide. And if there are things that you personally don't use as often, like say capture and share, you can put that on the far right. Again, this is something that feels much more like a kind of direct evolution of what we saw on the Xbox One, but heavily streamlined in a lot of ways that I can appreciate, and ultimately the best thing about it is the customization, because at the end of the day, you really decide what specific games or features or groups of things are highlighted, and you can tailor it to your personal preferences. If you don't care about seeing what games are listed on Game Pass because you haven't subscribed to it, you can remove that tab. If you don't care about looking at the entertainment tab of things, you can remove that. You can tailor the experience specifically the way you want it. Now again, for both of these systems, we currently have an incomplete picture. The Xbox Series X is going to continue to get some updates as we get up to the launch, while the PS5, again, we just have the one video to go off of, and they've already teased that there will be more they will be showing off as we get closer to the PS5's release. But just looking at what we can see for these two UIs, there's definitely a very different emphasis going on as far as the visual aspects go. The Xbox Series X UI is definitely much busier. There are a lot more things going on as far as just squares everywhere. The screen is constantly filled with options to select from, but what is a very nice aspect of it is that a lot of this is customizable up to you, at least in terms of which groups you want to see and placed where. PlayStation, on the other hand, at least when it comes to the home screen, is a much more minimalistic experience. It's just kind of highlighting a few specific games, and then you drop down if you want to look at more in-depth stuff for each of them. I think it does lead to a much more aesthetically pleasing look, but I am personally very curious to see if there's going to be any degree of kind of personal customization to that, or if, like with the PS4, it's just going to be a sort of constant line of what has most recently been played, and PlayStation kind of feeds to you what it thinks is the best layout for you. What's also interesting is how this is kind of a flip to their approaches to having an overlay system for games. The Xbox One Guide is just a very small part that comes up over the side, and then you can just access when you want to access and get out of it, whereas PlayStation is an entire overlay that just goes over everything with the Command Center. But also, this Command Center is offering a whole lot of new features and functions that we've never seen before that may very well heavily change the way that the UI allows you to interact with games, at least those that are going to fully embrace and integrate it. These are two very different approaches that have their individual strengths and weaknesses. I appreciate the kind of customization control that Xbox has to offer, but there is definitely something about the look, style, and new features of the PS5 that are very exciting, especially because, you know, it's something I don't actually have hands-on with yet. I've been messing with the Series X, and so I now know how it works and flows and feels, whereas PS5, it's still very much of a mystery in a lot of ways, and a lot of these new features look very exciting, especially being able to do things like picture-in-picture screen share, actual built-in walkthrough guide support for particular games, and even being able to use the UI to manipulate aspects of the game like jumping to a specific level you want to play. Given that this is an early look at both of them, I don't really want to try and walk away right now with some kind of like judgment of, oh, this one's amazing and this one's bad, or this is why these ones are better than others. I just really want to look at the approach they both had and highlight what we're looking at for these systems. And once we get our hands on them in about a month's time, a little less than, I'm really curious to see how these two different experiences are going to compare and which one ends up leaving me with a better feeling. Because it looks like overall, the kind of feeling they're both having is similar to what we had with the PS4 and Xbox One, where one again had that kind of focus on customization, but it was also a more busy interface, whereas the other one is more minimalist, but also doesn't give you quite as much control. But the new features being added to both and the degree of kind of streamlining they've both received, I think is going to make for a very interesting thing to take a look at during the November launch dates. Again, I am planning on reviewing both these systems when they release. I have been able to secure my pre-orders. Hopefully they actually show up. So if you want to see those full reviews as well as unboxings and all that good stuff, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more content planned getting ready for this next gen launch. It's going to be a very busy next month, and I'm looking forward to trying out and seeing what both these systems fully have to offer.